Welcome to Get Unpacked. Today, we're unpacking a diplomatic firestorm that really exposes the delicate and, frankly, dangerous power dynamics playing out between China, Japan, and the United States. We're going to go way beyond the angry headlines to get at the deeper forces at play here. All right, let's just jump right in. The whole thing ignited with this one single sentence. Speaking to Parliament, Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, didn't just make a statement, she drew a massive line in the sand. By tying Japan's own survival to Taiwan's, she sent absolute shockwaves across East Asia. And Beijing's reaction? It was swift, and it was severe. Just look at this timeline. It shows you exactly how fast things spun out of control. We're talking 72 hours. A single comment spiraled from a formal protest to a tit-for-tat summoning of ambassadors, and then, the big one, a travel advisory. That's a move that basically weaponizes tourism and signals a major diplomatic break. But this wasn't just a war of words. These actions had immediate, real-world consequences, and they pointed to a really deep fracture in the relationship between two of Asia's biggest economies. Let's dig into how this played out. And then, things really kicked up a notch. China's largest state-owned airlines basically slammed the brakes on travel to Japan. By offering full refunds and blaming a deteriorating security environment, Beijing wasn't just whispering a warning. It was shouting an economic threat and turning a political fight into a very public spectacle. So, this is the big question, right? Why did one little sentence cause this massive diplomatic explosion? To get that, we have to look past the day-to-day headlines and really examine the deep, historical foundations of how these powers see the world, and, maybe more importantly, how they see each other. And that brings us to something we can call the alliance equation. Because this whole conflict, it's rooted in a fundamental, almost philosophical difference in how Japan and China think about the very idea of an alliance. And this slide, it just lays it all out perfectly. On one side you have Japan. Its entire post-war security has been built on this one, single, loyal alliance with a stronger patron, the United States. This fits a traditional Japanese model, something called Oyabun Kobun. You can think of it as a patron-client relationship, where loyalty is everything. China, though, they've gone the complete opposite direction. After a really bitter experience as the junior partner to the Soviet Union, Beijing just has no patience for that kind of setup. They value equality, and they much prefer flexible partnerships over what they see as these really constraining, binding military alliances. Now, this deep difference in how they approach things brings a crucial third player into the drama, the United States. America's presence transforms what looks like a two-way rivalry into what analysts call a strategic triangle. The core idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You just can't understand the relationship between any two of these countries without thinking about the third. Every single move Japan makes is watched by China through the lens of that US alliance. Every US action in the region changes how China and Japan talk to each other. They're all connected. Now, according to this theory, this triangle can be set up in a few different ways. But the situation we're seeing in East Asia right now, well, it looks a lot like one specific and potentially pretty unstable pattern. Let's break it down. First, you've got what's called the romantic triangle. This is where one country acts as a pivot, and it cleverly keeps better relationships with two rival nations than they have with each other. That's the power position. The second one is the stable marriage. This is much simpler. Two countries, the spouses, team up in a tight alliance against a third, the pariah. So, which one are we looking at today? Yeah, all the signs are pointing to a stable marriage. The US and Japan are the tightly allied spouses, bound together by their security treaty. And that structure, by its very nature, positions China on the outside as the strategic rival, the pariah, that the alliance is built to counter. And what's so fascinating about this is that the United States has actually played both of these roles before, the pivot and the spouse, and the results for regional stability were completely dramatically different. Just look at the history here. During the Cold War, when China and the Soviet Union were at each other's throats, the US expertly played the pivot. By keeping better ties with both Moscow and Beijing than they had with each other, Washington managed to de-escalate tensions and stabilize things. But today, the strategy is totally different. The US is a committed spouse to Japan, doubling down on that exclusive alliance. And the outcome? Well, it's polarizing the entire region and feeding right into China's deepest fears about being strategically surrounded. But it is so important to remember that this alliance isn't really about friendship. As one analyst puts it so bluntly, American action isn't based on goodwill. It's based on a cold, hard calculation of its own national interests. The US steps in not just to help an ally, but because the cost of not stepping in would be an even bigger loss for America itself. So when we circle all the way back to Prime Minister Takaichi's comment about Taiwan, we can see it in a completely new light. That wasn't just some off-the-cuff remark. No way. It was a strategic move, and it was designed to test the strength, the commitment, and the very alignment of this entire triangle. So what's the bottom line here? What do we really need to take away from all this? Well, first, Japan is clearly moving away from its old policy of being vague about Taiwan. In response, China is making it crystal clear that Taiwan is a red line you do not cross. This whole dynamic is making the US-Japan alliance stronger, sure, but it's also making the whole region more polarized. And look, these aren't just abstract political games. This tension threatens the global sea lanes we all depend on. It just goes to show how these old historical views on what an alliance is are still shaping today's conflicts. And that leaves us with a huge question. And it's not just for diplomats. It's for the future of the entire global economy and world security. As power continues to shift in East Asia, can this stable marriage, this 2-against-1 structure, can it actually hold? Or is it just destined to break under all this pressure? The answer to that is probably going to define the 21st century.